There's Shauna Cox. We just thought we'd get a picture of you this morning, Ryan.
Limo. I've never been in one.
Never been in a limo. You deserve a limo.
Ready for your opening arguments today, Ryan?
Well, I hope so. I had some good thoughts early this morning, and we'll see where that takes us.
Yes.
Good.
Well, good to see you.
Good to see the sunlight.
Yes.
We were all in tears watching the reunion with your children last night. Yeah, praise God. Yep, it's a beautiful morning.
Well, sorry to get you on camera. Okay, guys, we're going to sign off. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're end of another day here at the federal courthouse in Las Vegas. I'm here with Gina Harden from California. So she's been reporting quite a while, and she's also came out to Camp Liberty when we were there in this summer. And so you'll have to look up her page also.
Liberty Grows.
Liberty Grows. So what was your take on the day?
We just witnessed a miracle in Judge Navarro's courtroom. The miracle that we've been praying for. The jury got to hear the truth. The jury got to hear the whole story, thanks to Cliven Bundy's attorney, Mr. Whipple. And it was great to watch. And you know, when the prosecution comes out and does their opening statement, the lawyers told me it's not an opening argument, you have to call it a statement.
Yeah.
And you know, and it always looks bad when you see these pictures of guns, but all they showed were screenshots. And you know, and they start with their timeline back in 1998 and these court orders. But Mr. Whipple came and put it all in context, showed the whole video, and made the government look like a bunch of liars when you see it in context. And he took it back to, what was it, 1850s?
Yes.
And told the story of the Old West and talked about, well, go ahead and go
Oh,
ahead
yeah.
John.
He went right through the whole thing. He said, this is about natural resources. Something we've been talking about all along, you know. Why does the government want the Bundys off? It's not about money. That was brought up multiple times. He said, this isn't about money. This is about the natural resources that this land holds. The water rights, which Cliven Bundy owns. And they've owned this, like she said, since 1860s, 1877 to be exact. June 7th of 1877 is when the Bundy Ranch was founded. And this is a fact. This isn't hearsay. This is a fact, and it was brought out again in court today. And it came down to scientists, the water rights, the mineral rights, all this kind of stuff is what this case is all about. The Desert Taurus from 1989 is when Cliven Bundy started being attacked. And so that's what it's all about.
Well, they talked about how the BLM was really just trying to put them out of business because they said, you know, oh, this poor tortoise is endangered. You can't have this many cattle out there. I think it went from like 150 down to 92. And he said, well, wait a minute. He said, I protest that because if I don't have my cattle out there, then I lose my water rights because you use it or lose it. That's the law. And his attorney was telling them, you can't let them do this. And so they actually got the state legislators to get involved. The first time the government tried to impound the cattle, and the state legislatures went to the federal government and said, you can't do this. This isn't right. And they ceased their operation then.
Exactly. One saying I kind of liked, and I wrote it down in my notes, that was said is, alcohol is for drinking, water is for fighting. And that's what it's been about, is the water rights here. The one thing that was brought up is, why were there dump trucks? The contractors supposedly were cowboys, brought in horse trailers and tools to gather cows up. But there was dump trucks and backhoes and other things. What was in the back of some of these dump trucks? One of them was water pipes that they had tore up, and they didn't have any warrants or any permission and any court order to tear down.
Right. This was all Cliven Bundy's labor. Yes. This was the labor for generations of protecting this water from the Virgin River and the springs and bringing water to the desert so that the tortoises and the cattle and everything else can survive. And they were destroying his property and stealing his property, and there was no court order that allowed them to do this. And so this was this event, I think, on April 9th, yes, when Davy Bundy was out there. And they told the whole story. Ryan's coming home with his family from church, and he sees Davy out there in trouble with a bunch of officers. And the government had said, oh, you know, these Bundy boys were threatening and intimidating these officers. And so Whipple said, well, let's watch the video and you be the judge. And then you see in this, you know, it's just like one of these police. It was from a police dash cam or something, and we're so used to seeing that all the time now. And he shows the video, and it was tense, but the tension was coming from, I mean, the Bundys were surrounded by these officers, and then you see, it's kind of off to the side, you see Dave get tossed to the ground, and then they show the follow-up picture of the injuries to Dave Bundy's face. And
he was never charged with anything there. He was only arrested and detained, but never charged. 2 years after that fact, he was charged with other types of crimes, but nothing dealing with that incident there. So it was definitely a false arrest.
Yeah, and the Whipple really brought out how Cliven's been fighting this battle for decades, and he's always done so peacefully and lawfully.
Exactly. One thing I got brought up in this opening statements was that informants again, and what we've always wondered, and we wondered in the first trial up in Portland, about all the informants are there. Whipple claims that he's going to bring in some of these informants and show you that some of these people in the wash were not friendlies. They were informants, and this was all set up from the very beginning.
The government does them such a disservice to themselves when they show all these pictures of these scary guns, and then the defense gets up and shows the picture and says, well, you know what, that was actually an FBI informant. And there were more than a few. There were lots of them out there mingling with the unarmed women and children and other protesters.
Exactly. So the last couple of days with all these hearings, that's why we got such a blast off here, because a lot of things were allowed now because of all the motions and stuff we have been fighting for, such as the snipers got brought up in front of the jurors today. And it was quite profound.
It was frightening to hear, as Whipple described to the jury, how the Bundy home was being surveilled, how Cliven Bundy, how they videotaped him talking on the telephone inside his home, how they were surrounded by snipers and they were in fear for their life. Something that they were not. I mean, I remember when in the last trial when Drexler talked about, I was afraid for my life, and the judge right away read some jury instructions telling them disregard that. He wasn't supposed to say that.
So we've got a better start on this trial than we had in the last two, because the last two, the prosecutors and the judge actually suppressed a lot of stuff that we needed the jurors to hear. And so far today, we have heard more stuff in this first day of opening statements from the prosecutors and the defense team than we did almost the whole trial last time, because all of this stuff was kept out of it.
Yeah, it was interesting how they talked about that the BLM and FBI were constantly doing threat assessments because they were so concerned about their own safety.
Yes, that was very interesting.
So, yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff they brought out was stuff that was just recently discovered in the last couple of days.
We didn't know about the cameras. We didn't know about the surveillance stuff.
It reminded me so much of Ruby Ridge when they were talking about, just how they were so afraid of these Bundys, and they were just like scaring, the officers were scaring themselves to death. And it was really interesting how Whipple pointed out that when Metro came, that Metro was helping the Bundys, that Ryan actually rode with one of the Metro officers to the post, and that the Metro was actually pointing their guns at the federal agents and said, I can't imagine that there's any threat coming from the protesters.
Yes, exactly. Whipple made one statement. He said, being stressed is not a crime. It's their job. So some of this stuff comes in the line of duty. It definitely, we don't want any violence at all. That's why all these people came. They were sick and tired of the violence that was being done to these people that was there, such as Margaret Houston being thrown to the ground, and the government lied about it. It said she actually jumped in front of the truck when that video was showed today. Again, she did not jump in front of that truck.
Myrie said she was going in front of the car, and they threw her to the ground to save her and protect her. And then Whipple gets up and shows the video, and that car is coming by, and she's clearly on the side of the vehicle when he takes and throws her down.
So it was a great day for a beginning of this trial. I know there's a lot of more stuff going to come out. Tomorrow we have Ryan Bundy's opening statements. We have Ryan Payne's and Ammon Bundy's. So we got a big day tomorrow. We might have our first witness that the government's going to bring in. We'll see about that, but it's awesome.
I think Ryan Bundy's going to do amazing tomorrow. I was so disappointed that he wasn't able to go today because I have to go home and won't be here tomorrow. But whoever wants to come and hear Ryan give his statement tomorrow, that's going to be incredible. So, also they showed, the government only likes to show pictures of guns, but Whipple brought out the pictures of people praying, and
yes.
and so that was good too. And we appreciate everyone praying. We felt it today, and it's just been so amazing to see Ryan Bundy walking around free, seeing him at lunchtime and different things, and so.
And his wife was here today to see him. I know she can't come in the courtroom because she's a potential witness, but at least she was here and she gets to see him. That's it was a good day all day today.
And it's always great when the courtroom is full. We had a full courtroom. Right on the other side of the camera, you can't see. There's a whole crowd of family and supporters that have been here and supporting these guys.
Yes. So. Well, Gina came all the way from California. She's been here a couple different times.
Appreciate my husband. He took his last vacation day to stay with the kids so I could be here.
Is this your last day too?
Yeah.
Oh wow. So you don't get to be here tomorrow. But
I'll be home with everyone else glued to my phone.
Well, I'm glad you joined me today on here.
Thanks
for having me. I think Ken Rhodes, he came all the way from Michigan. He wants to say something real quick. I know his grandchildren watch him all the time on here. He's been involved from the very beginning also. But what do you have to say here?
Well, I want to say all of you listening, John will never ask you for any money, but John does need gas money and stuff to get around. He don't need a lot of money, but he needs some. But if you're going to give us the money and come back later and say, what's he doing with the money? He's stealing it, then don't send your money. He don't need it. So all you trolls can go away. But if y'all can, please send John a few dollars if he gets a flat or needs a tire or anything, because he's doing plenty. Here.
Brandon, you want to blow that shofar? Hey, Brandon, maybe now be a good time to explain the shofar too, because so many people ask what this shofar is all about. We've been hearing it since the Bundy Ranch. We heard it in Oregon during the trials there. But explain what this shofar is all about.
Well, the Bible talks about the trump of God. There's a whole bunch of scriptures on it. My favorite is Numbers, chapter 10, verses 8 and 9.
Yeah.
And it was something that was always supposed to happen generation after generation.
I didn't realize
it was supposed to be for the priest of Aaron throughout all their generations of time. And somewhere along the lines, we lost it. People quit doing it. Well, maybe the Middle East, they still do it. But anyhow, Numbers chapter 10, verses 8 and 9. And my favorite part in there is it says we'll be delivered from our enemies if we blow the trump. And that's my motivation.
And this shofar here, if you look at it here, it's 48 inches all total?
Yeah, this one's
it's pretty big. It's not a small shofar. It came from Israel, right? Came all the way from Israel.
Yeah, the Sephardic priest made it. I ordered it. It was like 7 years ago, and then they do whatever they do. It's kosher.
Yes.
And then of course, they sent it to me. But it's throughout the scriptures, especially the Bible there's a pile of scriptures on it, and I just mentioned one of the things that it's the Bible says, I believe it, that's all there is to it. So it doesn't take a whole lot of faith. God said if you blow this, you'll be delivered from your enemies. I believe him.
Well, give it a blow there for us. I tell you what, I've tried it myself. I can't do it nothing like that. No, I don't even want to try it right now. I'll embarrass myself. But it's not easy to do. I can tell you that much. So well, thanks everybody for joining us. We'll be back here tomorrow at 8:30 for court again to resume these opening statements from the remaining 3 defendants, and hopefully get our first witness for the government side, and we will get to cross-examine that witness. So we're looking forward to this process. All the guys looked good today. They're all excited that Ryan is out during this trial process, and so it's been a great day down here. Thanks everybody for praying for us and coming down here and support us if you can. We may not have any court on Thursday. We don't know yet. It's a possibility there may be no court. Other than that, we'll be back on Monday. Thanks again, and we'll see you tomorrow. Well, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. We're having a breakdown here at the Las Vegas Federal Courthouse in Nevada. We bring you some updates on this morning. It has been just a jam-packed morning here with everything going on. So started out early this morning. Hi, Wendy, Michelle, Miss Johnson, Karen, Fred. So we've had a lot to go over. I'll try to. Hi, Tal, how you doing? And Larry, we've got just a lot of stuff that's happened so far this morning. We're out on a quick break here. We'll be back here at 1:30, so I've got about a half hour here to go over all this stuff. But we started out at 8 o'clock this morning with Micah McGuire, his change of plea deal. And they did release Micah today, or he's going to be released sometime here today. We're giving his family some privacy so they can deal with their stuff and he can get back home. So Micah McGuire did change his plea, and his sentencing date is set for, I don't see it right here in my notes, but set for February. And that's when he's got to be back. It looks like February the 16th at 9 a.m. is his sentencing hearing. He's got, he pled out to count 2 of the conspiracy charge to impede federal officers. He did plead out to a felony charge. And if he is found, he could get up to 6 years and a $250,000 fine for that charge. Most likely he will not get that, but that's a possibility at the sentencing. Other than that, he was let go. The government was asked if they was going to agree for him to be released immediately or held till sentencing. The prosecution said the acceptance of responsibility, the government believes that he should be released. He's no longer a threat to society. So it is just wrong that if you make a plea deal, you can get out and you're no longer a threat, when some of these other guys, because they're claiming innocence yet and they want to go through a trial, that they will not let them out because they will not plead. So that was a sad morning. There was a lot of tears shed in the courtroom. We all have we're happy and sad at the same time for Micah and his family. We are glad that he's going home, but it's just sad that he had to spend 2 years for this to happen, for him to get out. Right after that hearing, we went into, we brought the jurors in for the trial now. So we officially have started the trial down here with the jurors in the room. We, Steve Myrie started out with the opening arguments, and he did finish just before the lunch break here. Quite lengthy opening arguments. Some new things that he brought into the opening argument that he failed to bring in the last 2 trials here. He brought in the snipers. He brought in Dave Bundy being arrested with a government twist of what did not happen. That's what's so interesting, of us sitting in the courtroom as observers, watching this stuff, seeing the evidence brought out in the last 2 trials, and then all of a sudden we're getting a different scenario. In his opening arguments, he brought up Scott Drexler and Eric Parker on the bridge, again pointing them guns, trying to saying they was intimidating these federal officers, when it was never proven in the last 2 trials. And he's still bringing up that same evidence all over again. He even went as far to say that Pete Santilli led the assault on these federal officers by live streaming them, and on his radio show by asking people to come support the Bundys. And he brought up Pete Santilli multiple times in this, saying that you will see and hear evidence of Pete Santilli here throughout this trial, how Pete Santilli is the one who's responsible for what happened by his live streams, which is totally wrong. One thing that I found very interesting here, and it just shows more how this prosecution team does not have everything together. Steve Myrie brought up a picture on the screen, the big projector there. He said, "This is Pete Santilli." And he left that picture up there for quite some time. I would guess 5 or 6 minutes, 8 minutes, and he kept referring to this as Pete Santilli. And this is the man who is responsible for this. And you got to understand two things. Pete Santilli's not on trial here, so he's not going to be in this trial that we know of because he's not part of it. He's already been released. But he brought this picture up of Pete Santilli. It wasn't Pete Santilli. It was a picture of somebody else. Several of us noticed that and kept looking up at the picture trying to see Pete Santilli, and he wasn't there. The prosecutors don't even seem to know who Pete Santilli is. And they showed the jurors a picture of someone else, not even Pete Santilli, and they're telling the jurors this is Pete Santilli. So some things are just seem way off here with what was going on here today. He said, first thing he brings up about the use of public lands. This was very interesting. The use of public lands are multiple, he says. One is mining. That was the first thing. He said then scientists use these public lands, and environmentalists use it, and then ranchers. He said so public lands have multiple uses. And he said that Cliven Bundy abused this public lands, how he was using it, because these cows become such a problem that they took over public lands. They become dangerous to the public. They were left there, left wild without any human interaction, and it doesn't even make sense. The things that Mr. Myrie kept bringing up on there about how dangerous these cows had become, that the BLM had to do something because they had taken over so much land that these cows were on 587,000 acres of public land. That number seems way out. I don't even believe that myself. I've been out there on the Bundy Ranch, and that would be miles and miles away from where they're supposed to be. But this is what Mr. Myrie's trying to prove to the jurors right now in these opening arguments about how dangerous these cows are because they don't have no human interaction, and that they became a dangerous to the public. It seems like they might have become a dangerous to me, to the miners that were trying to mine it for whatever reason, or the environmentalists that were trying to do whatever they're doing out there. There's a lot of things here that is a contradiction to what this is all about. He also kept bringing up the arrest of Dave Bundy, how Dave Bundy had trespassed when he tried to take pictures in a closed area. He never left the public highway. And Dave Bundy was just taking pictures of snipers, which Mr. Steve Myrie did bring up, that there were snipers up on the hill that was trying to protect the law enforcement that had the closed land. And so they had to arrest him because he was in this closed area. This trial is definitely going to be quite interesting because Dan Love's name was brought up here in this morning's opening arguments. Different people from other militia groups, their names were brought up today from across the country. The Arizona militia was brought up again multiple times. They mainly concentrated on pictures of just Stephen Stewart was in those pictures, but mainly of Eric Parker and Scott Drexler, trying to show how dangerous the gunmen were. But they did bring up a lot of other pictures of other men and Arizona militia, but didn't necessarily name all the names. They said the Arizona militia had the most power that was there, and they were underneath the bridge and such. A couple other things that he brought up, trying to show, in case these videos come in, he twisted the information by saying that Ammon Bundy took a swing at an officer is one of the reasons he had to be tased, and that he kicked a dog, even caused the dog to be tased. That's the first time we've ever heard that dog, police dog, being tased. It said one of the supporters even picked up a rock like he was going to throw it at the officers. These officers were in such danger. We never have heard of any rocks being thrown from protesters. Even if somebody picked up a rock, nobody ever threw one. All of this stuff is just speculation, things that have never happened, and they're just grabbing at straws, trying to show that these people were dangerous. And even brought up Margaret Houston, saying Margaret Houston attempted to jump in front of a vehicle And that's the reason an officer was forced to pull her back. Instead of throwing her to the ground, he had to pull her back. Margaret Houston never tried to jump in front of the vehicles. The videos will show that. We've seen that in the last trials. We also have viewed them many times, and Margaret Houston never tried to jump in front of a vehicle. So these are the kind of things that he's trying to tell the jurors starting right out without even showing the evidence. He's trying to set something in their mind that these police officers, these BLM officers, were only protecting themselves against a bunch of angry, violent protesters. And to finalize this, these are some of the things he said that he wanted the jurors should know at the end. He said, this case is not about protest. It's about violence. It's about angry protesters pointing guns at people. It's not about protest. They went there to intimidate. He said, it's not about the Second Amendment. We, the government, he says, we sacred the Second Amendment, which we know as a lie, as in the last few cases. But now they've twisted it, saying that we sacred, the federal government sacred, holds the Second Amendment sacred. And he says another thing that's going to be in this case is about one's belief. And these defendants have a belief, he said, about grazing rights, which is untrue. And he said one's rights are not constitutional, pretty much is what he said. This here is about the rule of law, and these defendants did not obey the rule of law. So that pretty much sums up this morning. We Mr. Myrie did close with his closing arguments just before lunch. We're going to have Mr. Whipple, Cliven Bundy's attorney. He's going to give opening arguments for starting for the defense, and we'll hear from hopefully each one of these other defendants or their attorneys today, and we'll get through with that. And when we do, if we have time, we will hear from the government's first witness either today or tomorrow morning. So it's been a long morning down here, jam-packed, a lot of things happening. We have a lot of things to be thankful for with hi Ricky. I see Ricky Loveland just joined on. Good to see you here, brother. But one of the main things we were really thankful for is that at least Ryan Bundy was released last night. We are all overjoyed about that. Somebody here actually brought him this morning in a limousine here to the courthouse. Did a quick little video this morning of that, and so Ryan got to ride in style this morning to court. It as a hero should, and he's been able to. First thing he did is I followed him into the courtroom to the courthouse this morning to follow him in and carrying his papers. They didn't want to let him in this morning because he didn't have ID on him. He said, well, it's me, Ryan Bundy. You all know me. But they finally let him in the courthouse with a little bit of finding some approval to get him in there. But they did not want to let him in there this morning because he didn't have his ID. But he did eventually get in there, and he was on time. And he's been in court all morning and doing a great job. And all the other guys looked good today. Everybody was in good spirits. The prosecution did want another continuance this morning, but it was denied. The defendants asked for dismissals if he was going to continue this because they said it should not go any further. Yeah, they was asking for a mistrial, and that did not happen. So the trial is happening. We are in the first day of this trial with the jurors there, and we're moving forward. So we'll have you hopefully another update this evening. We'll have you what happened with these opening arguments of the defendants. So if you can get down here, please join us. It looks like court's only going to be probably the day and tomorrow and maybe a little bit on Thursday, but it's going to be a short day on Thursday if we have court, and then back again on Monday. So that's all we have for right now. We'll see you back here later tonight, and we'll give you a final update on what's going on. Thank you, and God bless.